Green. I'm a co-founder of Two Farmers Crisps. We're a hand-cooked crisp company in the small county of Herefordshire. I'm a farmer, and growing potatoes is what I think I do best, and grown them all over Herefordshire. I'm very passionate about Herefordshire and what it has to offer. I think it's a marvellous agricultural county. I don't think there's anything that we can't grow in Herefordshire if we put our minds to it, from top fruit, soft fruit, vegetables, root crops, sheep, cattle, goats, you name it, we seem to have it in Herefordshire. So we're a thriving agricultural county, but we're also a long way from our marketplace. We have many great businesses in Herefordshire, but getting food to market from Herefordshire can sometimes be costly. And I think through my years of farming, I felt that it would be great if we could actually add some value to something we were doing. And I looked at a lot of projects and thought, well, why don't I come back to the potato? Because it's better to do something that you actually know something about to start with. So I had a little bit of a dream of making my own crisp company. There's a very good crisp company already in Herefordshire that most people know, and I've served potatoes too. So I looked at what they'd done and thought, well, we can do the same. So I modelled it around another company, which I don't think was a bad thing, I hope. And tell me if somebody, stop me if people want to ask a question. I'll keep rattling on a little bit, but please interrupt, I don't mind. As a Herefordshire farmer, I knew that I couldn't bring a crisp to the market without some help. And for many years, I approached several people about coming to do with me. And then literally over a pint and a packet of crisps in the pub one night, a good friend who was in the potato business, he has a farm, but also was more trading potatoes and marketing potatoes, asked me about the crisp and said how far I got. And I said, well, I've got so far, I found a name, but I'm really getting a bit lost. And he said, well, it really interests me. I'd be interested in doing something with you. So we basically 4 years ago, or a bit longer than that, 5 years ago, set up Two Farmers Crisps in the idea of having the potatoes on the farm, making them into crisps on the farm, and then distributing them. When we sort of got into looking at it a little bit deeper, we found that obviously we were going into a hugely crowded market. Crisp were sales, or snack market sales, were increasing, but not by very much. And there was a lot of new modern snacks that weren't made out of raw potatoes that were coming on the market, and we're going to take a share. But we still felt that there was room for a crisp in the market that was very sustainable. And I think that was where it really, for us, started to focus our minds as how do we make the most sustainable crisps. We had the potatoes on the farm. We could build a factory on the farm. We had the facilities. We were already on the farm making our own energy through an anaerobic digester. So we had a huge supply of gas, heat, and electric. So we felt that we could actually make the crisps as sustainable as possible. So that was probably the easy part. And then the second part was we started to look at how we were going to package our crisps. And we thought they've always been eaten up in a bag. Let's see if we can put them in a tin. We looked at tins and found that it was probably not cost effective to put 40 grams of crisps in a tin. We looked at boxes and found that was great, but then it was over packaged because you still in a box needed to put a bag inside the box to go on and so forth. So we sort of came back to the idea that perhaps somebody was quite right. The only way to eat a crisp was in a bag. And that was the point that looking at packaging and different bags, we came across compostable films, should I say. And those compostable films have been around for many, many years, probably the last 20 years in different forms, mainly for dry goods such as biscuits. Very expensive, so probably not widely used. But we started to talk about companies producing compostable films, and we said, has anybody ever made a crisp bag? And by chance they said, there is a company in the UK who has been working on it for quite a few years now, and they felt that they were getting close to making a bag of crisps out of a compostable film. We contacted them, and the journey really started. We knew nothing about it. We had to learn pretty quickly, but we could see that there was a possibility of having a compostable bag of crisps. So for those of you who don't know what a compostable bag of crisps really means, for us, it's a bag that composts in 26 weeks in home composting environments. So there's probably 3 ways of composting. It's home composting, which is 26 weeks, industrial composting, which is about 16 weeks, depending on how hot the industrial composting is. And literally then you could just plant your bags in the garden, and as long as they were mixed in the soil and went with microorganisms, depending on the temperature and where you were, they would compost over a period of a year. So we thought, great, we'll try and get our crisps in these bags. Being very new to it, we didn't really know how much it would cost us, but we thought that it went very well with our sustainability. The next part we moved on to was our flavours. Myself and Sean were very passionate about Herefordshire, and we were very keen to make all our flavours about Herefordshire or the surrounding counties. So we sort of looked at what we got really great in Herefordshire. We got some great cheese from a great producer called Charles Martel, and we picked his Hereford hot cheese, and he said, great, we could use it. We then looked at beef, and we came up with a flavour called Bullshot, which is basically beef and chili. We then got lots of apples in Herefordshire, well known for its cider. So we took some apples off the farm and made some great cider vinegar, and then put those on the crisps to make our apple cider vinegar flavoured crisps. And then the next one we came to was, because we were going with traditional flavours, we wanted salt. And that's where we sort of came to a stumbling halt, because we couldn't find any salt in Herefordshire. So we started to look at sea salts. And by chance, when I was doing an interview for the weather and potato grown with a BBC journalist, I mentioned, an off the record conversation that I've been that day looking at different salts. And she said, well, you've got salt on your doorstep. And I went, what do you mean? She said, there's salt in Droitwich. It's brine salt, and it's deep in the ground, and they're just bringing it to the surface again, burning the brine off, and they're selling it as a salt. And that was amazing to us, because then we had 4 flavours that were all about Herefordshire, and our flavours are 100% of the flavour in the bag. So quality has been a really important part for us, and sustainability. So that really was where we are, and how we launched Two Farmers Crisps in September of 2018. So that's a little bit about us.
Thank you very much. Wow. And so just a quick question. So how has the business changed during COVID-19? What's happened? What changes or change of strategy or change of production have you had to do during this COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, we came into sort of last winter sales building. January was a record month, which surprised us with record sales since we started, which was amazing to think. January, February increased again, March increased again, and then lockdown came, and literally we dropped off the edge of the cliff. We did shut the factory for a week. We had a huge amount of stock of 40-gram bags that were no longer nobody ordering. We had sales of our 150-gram bag, but they weren't massive. And we thought really we were going to be shut for a long period of time. But we did run an online shop, and we suddenly saw that the shop suddenly started to ping, and we started to get increased orders in the shop. So we diverted all of our marketing budget that we had into online sales. And by the end of April, we'd done another record month, and that was purely online.
Wow, that's pretty good. And is that continuing, or are you seeing any changes recently?
That continued April, May, and June, and then started to tail off or slow down in May. we've still got a good online sales, but as people then went out and about more, the online sales started to slow down. I think the biggest thing we learnt was to have a bigger range of customers. We set our goal out, Sean and I, to create a brand, and we wanted to protect that brand. And so to a degree, we were choosing which customers we went into. Now, rightly or wrongly, we could look back and say we should have opened our doors to every customer. We were never anti the supermarket, because that's not what we're about, but we were trying to protect a lot of customers that wanted our niche crisps for their farm shops, delis, cafes, didn't want to see us in a prime supermarket, which we could understand. We also didn't want to, we couldn't supply one supermarket because they'd take 100% of what we were producing, and that probably would have been dangerous for us as a small company. So we tried to resist going to the big five. We set up with smaller supermarkets. We started to do one called Booths, which is a Waitrose of the North, I call. So we were going into them in April, and we started to do some work with Co-op in their local stores. And I think probably those two had a massive impact on how we survived COVID during the April, May, June, because people were shopping in those supermarkets. So I think we learned a lot from it, and we learned that actually you do need to have a range of customers in there, because you do not know what's around the corner. And like everybody, we didn't see this coming.
I've also noticed on your website that you've got vegan friendly selections, and I know that we have a lot of social trends in food. So has this vegan trend hit your crisps?
Yeah, I mean, we've done very well out of what I call the vegan trend. I mean, we appeal to a lot of people that are very sustainable, and a lot of people view how we farm. You know, they've got some very strong views on how farming should be. But what I try to say to them is that, you know, we are intensive, but we're also sustainable. And I really do think that the two can go hand in hand. Everybody have their view, but I'm pretty confident that we can be intensive and sustainable. And yeah, we've created a good vegan market through different things like Plastic Planet and things like that, which have a big following by the sort of vegan movement.
Wow, amazing. In a normal year, we take our students to Berlin, and we go and see an aquaponics place there that sells basil in plastic bags. So you get a basil plant, and the basil plant is grown and in Berlin, and it's sold to Berlin Waitrose type shops. And because the basil plant is in a plastic container, in Germany, the plastic containers have a tax as a supplier. So I think they spend about 6,000 euros a month, which is about €1 per basil plant, because the plastic cartons that they're using with the basil plant is not disposable. And given that we normally follow things that happen in Europe, do you think that we should be really taxing non-disposable plastic? Or how do you think we should encourage the consumer?
I think it's difficult. I mean, plastic we use every day, and I'm not anti-plastic because it's a wonderful product, and especially, you know, if we can recycle it. So I'm not saying people you mustn't have things in plastic, but things are over packaged. All the things that we buy from the supermarket, well over packaged. We're never going to see a lot of people switching to compostable films in big companies because they're so expensive. So on our bag of crisps, if you were to take a plastic bag in a 40-gram bag, it probably costs a well-known big brand less than a penny a bag. It costs us 10p a bag. So there's a huge amount of our crisp and our is in the bag. So if you went to a set of accountants and said that you're selling so many billion bags of crisps a year and we're going to put 10p on them tomorrow morning, they probably say, no, we're not going to take the business that way. So I think you've got a big resistance from the big companies within their profit and accountants. And I think we've got to make sure that everybody can still afford everything. So I think if you start taxing everybody on it, you're always going to take an element of people who suddenly say, I can't afford that. So I think there's a balance, you know, to making sure that we don't overpackage things, and those people that can afford to buy into compostable films or are prepared to pay a little bit extra or put a little bit aside. And I think we must give people that choice rather than forcing them.
Okay, yeah, it is interesting the way that Germany, they tax the manufacturers and the suppliers to encourage them to have compostable items. And the company we visit, they were talking about going from €1 per item to 0.1 of €1 if they used a compostable. And what was interesting is they too have different compostable rates, and it fits into different tax rates. So if it composts within 26 weeks, it's one rate. If it goes in, I think 15 weeks, it's a lower rate. And it was fascinating. You know, the Germans are very good at sort of putting these things together, and sort of change consumer behavior.